business section of the paper and turn to the commercial, industrial and investment property section. It's in the classified section of the business section. There will be development sites galore listed in there. There'll even be development sites for joint ventures, sites that you can option, sites that are vendor financed. Jamie spoke a bit about that yesterday, and I'll talk to you about it a little bit more. The other place is websites. And again, don't go to your realestate.com.au sites. Those are for people buying Coca-Cola at $4.50. I don't use those sites unless I just want to get comparable information on what properties are selling for. I go to sites that developers use, such as millerslist.com.au, M-I-L-L-A-R-S list.com. Sorry, it's just .com, not .au. This guy goes and scouts development sites from all over Australia, New Zealand, and some in Asia lately. He then puts them all together on one site. So you can go and have a look at all kinds of different development sites of all sizes and what have you, and get all the information right there. Now, most of you, if you get involved in property development, are going to do it while working your normal job, at least to begin with. So you don't have time to be running around looking for development sites. You want the tools right at your fingertips, and that's why websites are fantastic. Even if you just Google development sites, you'll get websites coming up that give you development sites that for agents, for development agents, or for developers, not the normal stuff. And they're the websites that you need to be looking at. You also need to have the right tools, because once you find a development site, you need to be able to quickly work out whether it's workable or not. You don't want to be driving around for hours and hours checking out whether or not sites are going to work. So tools such as this. On the left, you'll see a local environment plan. This is what the council issues to basically say what they want to happen in that area. So you could be sitting on a property right now that you think is a development site, or have you ever driven down the street and you know you'll see like an apartment block, an old shack, an apartment block. Has anybody ever done that? And you think to yourself, ooh, that's a good property, I think, maybe. What would I do with it? And you don't quite know, can I build it into apartments like everything else? You know what I mean? You're not sure, how do I find out all this information? This is how you find it out. Go to your council website and look at the local environment plan. The one on the right is a zoning map, which Mark showed you a copy of this morning as well. A zoning map will show you the exact streets of an area and what can be built on the streets in that area. So it'll have different colours that delineate what can and can't be built. And you then look in the local environment plan to find even more information. It'll tell you, can you build 3 stories? Can you build houses or units? It'll give you all the information you need. You could all be sitting on development sites right now if you own property and not even know it. And that's how you find it out. So having these tools at your fingertips will give you this kind of information so you don't have to spend time driving around. Now you need to do a site analysis. You need to look at demographics, because there's no point going out and building units in a country area, is there? We don't want to go into the middle of the country and build studio units. I mean, they might look fantastic, but if no one buys them, then you're not going to make any profit. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yeah. Whoa, good. The other thing is site coverage. You want to make sure that you're able to get what you need to build on that site. So if you're planning on building 12 townhouses, you need to make sure not only that you've got enough land for it, but that the street frontage is also the right size for a 12 townhouse development. And council will tell you this information in the local environment plan. Here's an example of a development site that a client of mine did. The green one is the 1,200 square metre block. And that's the site that my client had. This client called me out, Carly, I've got a great site, I think it's going to work, I'm sure it is, it's profitable. Now I will, any of my clients, I'll check their development sites for them before they go ahead and buy to make sure that I think it is a good deal. So this client emailed this to me and said, it works. They sent me the feasibility, it looks like it was going to be profitable. It had a street frontage of 15 metres. Unfortunately, the council wanted a minimum street frontage of 20 metres. So he's just 5 metres off. Now, this is the kind of information that because he wasn't completely educated, he hadn't yet done my course, he wasn't able to know this. And this is where property development can be risky if you don't have the knowledge, or if you don't have the team of professionals working for you. because he could have emailed this to his architect and his architect would have told him straight away, no, it's 5 metres too short. Does that make sense? So you've got to have a team of people around you that are more educated than you are. Now we've done the analysis and think that the site's going to work, we need to work out, is it going to be feasible? Are we going to get any profit out of this? GSR tells us how much profit we're going to make. That's just a fancy term for what are we going to sell the properties for. So if there's 10 properties and we're going to be able to sell them for $300,000 each, our GSR is 3 million. That's right. So the gross sales realisation is just what you're going to sell it for. Now, if you overestimate your gross sales realisation, you're going to overestimate your profits. Because you take your gross sales realisation, how much you're selling all the properties for, and you deduct from that all of the costs. And then you come up with your profit. So if that figure was too high in the first place, you've overestimated your profits. Does that make sense? Okay. You also need to maximise the usage. As I said, our job as developers is to be entrepreneurial. It is to work out, how do I get as much money out of this land as possible without compromising the value of it, without compromising what I'm building so that I'm still able to sell it. Here's an example of a development I did. Fantastic development. I bought it just as the market in Sydney started to crash quite a few years ago. So the market was up, up, up. I bought it and the market crashed. So I spent a bit too much money on it, but I was able to renegotiate and get the price down another $1 million even after I'd bought it, because I hadn't paid them all the money yet. Again, only able to do it because I understood how to negotiate properly and how the development process worked. Now this property, because of the change in the market, the original 22 units that I was going to be able to build was now going to make me no profit because prices had crashed. So I had to work out, how am I going to get more properties on this site? I knocked on so many architects' doors until I finally found one who who said to me, you know what, we can think laterally. If we move this, if we change that, if we just shift this a little bit, then we're going to be able to get 29 units and you're going to have more than $2 million profit. What did I do? I had no idea how to do that. I didn't go to the architect and say, no, I've been looking at these plans and I think that if we slightly move this room, I wouldn't have had a clue. All I knew was I was going to make no profit in example 1 and I didn't like that scenario. So I just went to architect after architect until I found someone who did have a clue and did think laterally. See how important your team is? It's not what I knew. It was the fact that I was willing to be entrepreneurial and I was willing to keep going until I got my profits. And it was worth it for over $2 million profit, don't you reckon? Absolutely. Step 4, we need a finance. If we think the development site's working, we now need to work out how to get the money. Now, as I said, you don't have to go all the way through to construction if you're a developer. There are other ways to make money as a developer. But if you do go all the way through to construction, then you need to borrow all of the money to buy the land and you need to borrow all of the money to do the construction. Now, if you go and do a development site without knowing much about development, you'll probably go and get a residential loan, which means you have to pay the interest out of your pocket every week or every month. Now, if you're doing a $1 or $2 million development site or 3 or 4, that's a lot of interest, isn't it? That's ridiculous. Most of us can't keep up with that kind of interest. Do you reckon the bloke that built Q1, do you reckon he was paying interest payments on that as he went? No. Commercial finance is different. And this is what you need to understand, and property developers understand this. Commercial interest, they will lend you the interest to pay them back. It's called capitalisation. So, and that's what the bloke who built Q1 was doing. He wasn't paying all that interest out for that development site. So you could be doing a multi-million-dollar development site but not paying any interest on it out of your own pocket. They will lend you the interest to pay them back. Because you don't have the cash flow. You're going to make your money at the end. And then at the end, when you've got all your profits, you pay them back. Does that make sense? And that's one of the biggest myths in property development, is that people think you've got to pay interest out on these big sites. No, they'll lend you the interest. Commercial finance, they're also really willing to work with you and help you work out how you can make the deal. My financier, I'll call him up and say to him, this is the deal I've got. You tell me what the minimum is I need to do and what's the smartest way I could structure it. And he'll come back and try and tell me how I can pay none of my own money and how I can get smart about it. So you don't want your normal residential lender, you want a commercial lender who's done property development finance. But once again, that's only if you're going to go through to construction. The other way is doing creative financing. If you've got absolutely no money and no assets, then you want to get creative. Imagine you find a development site that is just gold. It's a ripper. But it's going to cost $1 million. And you've got a total of nada. You need to get creative. You go to yourself, man, I'm going to make $300,000 out of this deal. It's a ripper. I've got to do it. I just got to work out how to do it. This is how you could possibly do it. You're going to need $300,000 deposit for the bank to give you another $700,000. If you've got none, $300,000 seems like a lot, doesn't it? Doesn't it? So how do we come up with that $300,000? Jamie spoke about this briefly yesterday. What have we said to the vendor, the guy selling you the property? Look, I would like you to give me $300,000 so I can buy this property off you. Do you reckon he's going to say yes? Maybe not. What have you said to him? But I'll pay you $1.1 million instead of $1 million. I'll give you an extra $100,000. I'm going to develop it, and my profits are $300,000. I'll keep $200 and give you $100 back. He leaves his $300,000 equity in the property. The bank lends you the other $700. You get 100% construction finance. What have we just done? A development site for free. You thought it was going to be all these complicated scenarios? It is that bloody easy. Clients of mine are doing it every day. People in Australia are doing this every day. This is how property millionaires are made. Buying property using the vendor's money, using the bank's money. Now, sure, you're not making as much profit, are you? But you weren't going to make any. So 200 is pretty good. Who would settle for 200 over none? That's what I thought. We've got a smart audience. Step 5, we need to get the plans approved. Now, option and DA is something that you can do instead of doing the whole development process. So if you've decided to yourself, yes, I do want to go ahead and construct, then you need to make sure you've got a DA on the property, or you need to make sure you've got a building approval to go ahead on the property. But you might think to yourself, you know what, I actually don't want to construct. I just want to option the property, get a DA approved, and sell it to somebody else. Who here knows what an option is? Fantastic, most of the room. An option is basically a lay-by. That's all it is. Imagine to yourself, you're walking down the street, you see a shop, you see a gorgeous dress or a gorgeous pair of pants, and you think to yourself, oh, that looks nice. But it's just been Christmas, I put it on a little bit of weight, it doesn't quite fit, but I'm going to go on a diet and it'll fit in 4 weeks. But in 4 weeks, it's not going to be there anymore and it's not going to be on sale. So I'm going to put down $10 now, and I'm going to come back in 4 weeks' time hoping that it fits. And then I'll pay the rest. You've just secured yourself the dress or the pair of pants, whatever it is, at today's price with just a little bit of money, right? Now, in 4 weeks, if it fits, fantastic. If it doesn't, you forfeit that $10 that you put down. Does that make sense? So imagine you went along and found a property. And in Queensland, this works fantastically. In fact, in any area where there's been an increase in property, it works fantastic. And in any area where there's been a crash or there's currently a dead market, it works fantastic. So this works in absolutely any market. I'll tell you why it works well, specifically in Queensland at the moment. The Queensland market, who would agree, has been doing this quite steadily. Yeah? Been going up. Now, people are saying it's going to keep going up. Some people are saying it's going to crash. Some people are going to saying it's going to level out. Who cares? What we do know is this has happened. Do we all agree that this has happened? We do. Okay. So what it means is, and what has also happened is there's been a big infrastructure boom. The Queensland government have put billions of dollars into into the local areas, into infrastructure. So the average Joe who owned a house, and he bought that house for $300,000, and then a few years went past and this kept happening to the market, and building was going on everywhere and developments were going on everywhere, and southeast Queensland was exploding, and the Gold Coast continued and Brisbane continued. So what did the council do? They started to change the zonings of areas to keep up with what was needed, to keep up with the demand. So where a house used to be just a house, the council have now said, you know what, we're going to let you turn that into 3 units. Does that make sense? So it used to be just a house, now you're allowed to turn it into 3 units. The markets kept going up, so average Joe's property, which was worth $300,000, is now worth $500,000. So he's now got a $500,000 property, and he's got a development site. Now, do you reckon average Joe has any idea how to go and develop? None at all. There are so many myths out there about property development, people are scared of it. And it is so simple if you understand the process. What this means is somebody that has the knowledge, somebody that has the education of how to develop could come along to Joe and say to Joe, because he's now got equity in his property and he's now got a development site, but there's no DA approved on it. Council haven't given you approval to build. So it takes someone entrepreneurial, yourselves, someone creative, someone who's got the education to come to him and go, look, I'll do you a deal. Why don't we develop this together? I know all about property development. I've learned all about it. I went to this course this amazing lady did. And I want to option this property from you. Now, you could joint venture or you could option. You could say to him, look, mate, I'm going to give you $3,000 right now. Now, even though he's sitting on a gold mine, he might be cash flow poor. $3,000 might sound brilliant to him. For $3,000, you get the right to option it. So nobody else can buy it for the next 12 months. You then go off and you go to the council down here and you get the DA. Now, you might spend $10,000 getting the DA. So you've now spent $13,000. But once that you have a DA on it, that property is no longer worth $500,000. That property is now worth $700,000. So you've spent $14,000 to buy a property. You spent $14,000 to take an option out on a property for worth $500,000. So you've got the right to buy that property for $500,000. But now it's worth $700,000 and you own that DA. You own it, not Joe. So you now go and find a developer who does want to build and you sell it to him for $700,000. And you've made yourself $186,000. Does that make sense? Does everybody get that? So by having a little bit of education, you can go out and this is a basic example. By having a little bit of education, by knowing how to find the sites, by knowing how to go and speak to average Joe, because average Joe could do this himself. But the idea of a DA, the idea of going to council, freaks him out. He needs someone like you. These are everywhere. Smaller than this, bigger than this, everywhere. Because Australia is such a fast-growing nation, changing its zoning so fast and our market is going up, these opportunities are everywhere. Developers literally can't keep up with them. And that's how you can make quick money by using only a little bit of money straight away. Next step is construction. So if you decide to yourself, look, I went and did that DA and I could sell it and make about 180, but I'd rather go through, do it myself and make double that. Then you need to select a builder. The way you select a builder, the best way is through networks. We've all heard dramas about builders, right? Well, the best way is to find a builder through a network. So if you go to an event like this, there are builders in this room, and find out other builders that are on your wavelength and they're thinking the same as you. Otherwise, you're going to have to open up a phone book and call at least 3 of them and get quotes from 3 different builders. The other fantastic thing to do is if you're doing your first development site, do a joint venture with the builder. So get involved with the builder. What that means is he's not going to rip you off because he's involved. So he gets a split of the profits at the end, which means he's going to do everything he can to make sure it's done on time, the prices are as low as possible, because he makes his money on the profit at the end. Does that make sense? So that's a good way if you're a bit worried about your builder or how to find a good builder. Do a joint venture with them. Project management is a fantastic way that you can make money or make a salary out of doing development. So if you're building a development site, the hierarchy looks something like this. You've got your developer at your top. Underneath that, you have a project manager. Then you have the builder. Then you have the site manager. And then you've got the tradesman. Now, there's not always a project manager. If it's a big site, there will be a project manager. If it's a smaller site, you might not have one. And the project manager and the developer wear similar roles. They're similar kind of jobs. Now, once you've done a couple of development sites, you can actually wear the hat of being a project manager. So you can go in and be the person that coordinates everything. Now, the developer is like the CEO. The project manager coordinates everything on a daily basis. The builder makes sure everything's going okay with the tradesman. The site manager is on site at all times making sure everything's coordinated, and the tradesmen are doing the work. So being a project manager is how you can start to make a salary. Now we have to start selling. Now selling, although it's the last point, should actually start at the beginning. Because if you haven't sold by the time you've finished, then you're going to still have to pay extra interest. And even though they're lending you the money for the interest, you've got to pay it back at the end out of your profits. So you want to try and have all your sales done by the time you've finished. So sales through networking can be a fantastic way. If you're doing a duplex or a triplex site and it's just a small site, then do networking and sell it through friends or what have you. Maybe do them a bit of a deal so you can get them sold quick. If you're selling off the plan, then you'll get them sold before you're finished. Now, off the plan has gotten a bit of a bad name, and it has done so because people have done it unethically. So they've gone and sold off the plan, but they've gone, look, I'm going to sell this property off the plan. It's not going to be finished for 2 years, so I'm going to sell it to them for the price that it's going to be worth in 2 years. That's just stupid. The whole advantage of off the plan for you is to get the sale now, and for the buyer is to pay today's price, even though he doesn't have to pay for another couple of years. So off the plan is fantastic, but do it right if you're the developer. And here's why you do it. Remember, we're the creator, we're the dreamers, we're the entrepreneurs. That's what the developer is. So imagine you're developing this site, and you went to a friend and you said, look, I'm building some units. Would you like to buy one? It's the one in the foreground, and it's going to be a really big development, and it's going to be flash, and I know you'll like it. And, you're trying to explain to your friend. Your friend's probably going to turn around and go, the grass is a bit long. I don't know. Is that fence still going to be there? So you get an artist's impression done. You need to sell the dream to them. Let them see the vision that you're building. Again, your architect can organise this for you. So you don't have to